Welcome to the Friday Night Campfire Stories. My name is Rob, and I will be your host for this evening. First of all, happy 4th of July to everybody that celebrates it. It is the first Friday of the month, meaning we are starting a brand new story, and this one I am so excited for. I've been waiting for this one to come out, but it's finally time. Today we'll be reading through the first chapter of my story, Perspective. Perspective is probably my favorite story I've released so far, and without a doubt, this is one of the more challenging stories I've ever written because Perspective follows Brad and Sophia, who knew each other in high school and now are going on their first date years later. They're trying to rehash any old feelings that they may have had or maybe didn't have. However, this one story is told twice. Two different sides of the story, two completely different tales that they each tell. That brings up the challenging part of writing it was how do I make one story told by two different people completely different, and I think I did a pretty perfect job with it. This is a tale of psychological thriller and horror that is going to leave you questioning what is real and what is going to happen next with every single word. And I think it's one that you're definitely going to enjoy and is going to keep you gripped until the very end, so definitely stick around for that. Also, real quick, my book, The Hollow Season, will be coming out on August 1st. It's a horror anthology series. It is 6 terrifying tales, and I can't wait for it to come out. This is definitely the most powerful, most emotional, and most professional thing I've written so far, and this book is going to be something that you're definitely going to want to check out. However, I am doing a giveaway for that, so definitely stick around until the end of the video to find out how you can enter in for a chance to win a copy of The Hollow Season. But for now, let's get into it. This is my story, Perspective.
Perspective. Chapter 1. The restaurant was nestled in a quiet part of town, where twinkling streetlights lined cobblestone paths and ivy-covered walls hinted at the charm within. As Brad and Sophia stepped inside, they were greeted by a warm, intimate glow from crystal chandeliers overhead, casting soft, golden light over each elegantly set table. Fresh roses adorned every table, their gentle fragrance blending with the faint aroma of gourmet dishes in the air. The walls were lined with deep, rich mahogany paneling, and soft jazz music played in the background, each note adding to the sense of timeless elegance. Every table was draped in white linen, set with delicate china and sparkling silverware, giving the entire space a feeling of refined luxury. The flickering candlelight danced across the polished wine glasses, casting soft shadows that made the room feel both spacious and private, as if each couple there had their own secret corner of the world. A quiet hum of conversation filled the air, blending with the sound of clinking glasses and hushed laughter. It was the kind of place where time felt suspended, designed for those who wanted to savor every detail and indulge in the romance of the moment. As Brad guided Sophia to their table, near the large, arched window overlooking the city lights, he felt like they had stepped into a world crafted just for them. The soft glow of candlelight cast a warm aura over their table, setting a perfect stage for the evening. Brad glanced at Sophia, feeling an unexpected surge of nervousness. She was more beautiful than he remembered, her laughter blending seamlessly with the gentle background music. He could hardly believe they were finally here, on a real date, after all these years. "Can I be honest?" Brad asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Sophia raised her brows, her lips curling into a playful smile. "Please do." Brad shifted slightly in his seat, his cheeks flushing. I've actually liked you since high school. I just never had the courage to tell you." Sophia's eyes softened, and she reached out, lightly brushing his hand. "You're kidding. Brad, I've had a thing for you too. I just thought you didn't notice me." He chuckled, feeling a flood of relief and happiness. "How could I not? I remember every class we had together. I'd be counting down the minutes just to sit near you." She laughed softly, looking down as if a bit shy herself. "I'm glad you finally said something." They shared a lingering gaze, the kind that could make the rest of the world disappear. Brad's heart raced, and he felt that unmistakable feeling, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. They spoke about everything, their memories from high school, dreams, the future, even the silly things that only they would remember. Every word, every laugh felt like it had been waiting for this moment. So, what do you see in your future, Brad? Sophia asked, tilting her head with an intrigued expression. I see someone by my side, he replied, his voice softening. Someone who understands me, who I can share everything with. Someone like you, maybe? Sophia's cheeks turned a faint pink, and she smiled, her eyes sparkling. I think I'd like that too. Just then, their waiter approached, a polished young man with a friendly smile. Is everything all right here? Brad looked at Sophia, sharing a knowing smile. I don't think we need anything, do we? He asked, his gaze lingering on her. Sophia laughed, playing along. Well, unless you have anything that makes time stop. This moment is pretty perfect. The waiter chuckled politely, catching the spark between them. I'll let you two enjoy. Just let me know if you need anything, he said, stepping away. Brad grinned, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to a gentle murmur. See? Even the waiter thinks we're meant to be here. Sophia shook her head, trying to suppress a smile. Oh, so now you believe in fate? Brad shrugged, his eyes twinkling. I think I might start if it means I get to sit across from you. Sophia's laughter was soft, almost musical. She reached across the table, resting her hand lightly over his. It's funny, isn't it? All those years of passing each other in the hallway, barely even saying hi. And now, here we are. Brad nodded, his gaze turning more serious as he looked into her eyes. Maybe we just needed time to figure it all out, to realize what we really wanted. He paused, as if contemplating his own words. I don't think I ever stopped liking you, you know. Sophia bit her lip, looking slightly embarrassed, yet thrilled. You were my high school crush, Brad, she confessed softly. But I thought you'd never be interested in me. You were so, cool and confident. Brad raised his eyebrows, laughing. Cool and confident? Sophia, I barely managed to ask you to prom. I think I still have nightmares about it. She laughed, covering her mouth. Oh, please, I was hoping you'd ask, but I was too shy to do anything, and when you didn't... I know, he interrupted gently. I regret it now, but I don't want to miss any more chances with you. They sat in silence for a moment, the words lingering between them, each fully immersed in the other's presence. Brad finally cleared his throat. So, tell me, if I hadn't asked you out now, would you have ever reached out? Sophia tilted her head, pretending to consider it. Maybe in another 5 or 6 years, she teased. He laughed. 5 or 6 years? I would have lost my mind by then. No way. I'd have found a way. Would you now? She replied, raising an eyebrow. I would, he said with utter certainty, a hint of intensity in his eyes. I wouldn't let you get away again. Sophia blinked, visibly touched by the sincerity in his voice. Well, you don't have to worry about that now, do you? No, he murmured, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You're right here, right where you belong. They held each other's gaze, the room seeming to fade around them. Brad took a breath, reaching for her hand again, his thumb gently tracing circles on her knuckles. There was something between them that felt beyond just attraction. It was as if everything in their lives had quietly, inevitably, led them here. So, Brad began, breaking the silence, his voice filled with a playful warmth. Should we make a pact? Sophia laughed, a soft, curious sound. A pact? Yes, he said, his eyes twinkling mischievously. A pact to never let anything come between us. We'll be inseparable. Her eyes widened, a mixture of amusement and surprise on her face. You're serious? As serious as I've ever been. She chuckled, giving his hand a squeeze. All right, Brad, I'm in. Inseparable. Brad leaned back in his chair, his fingers still laced with Sophia's. His gaze softened as he looked at her, hesitant but hopeful. So, he started, glancing away for a second before meeting her eyes again. I know it's kind of soon, but would you want to come back to my place just to keep talking? Sophia's eyes lit up, and before he could finish, she sat up, raising her hand and calling across the restaurant with a grin. Excuse me. Check, please. Her voice carried, and a few nearby tables glanced over, clearly amused by her eagerness. Brad burst out laughing, a mix of surprise and admiration in his eyes. Wow, he chuckled, shaking his head. You didn't have to yell. She turned back to him, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Are you kidding? I'm not letting a minute go by that we could be spending together somewhere that isn't, well, here. Brad grinned, holding her gaze. I like the sound of that. The waiter approached with their check, clearly trying to hide a smile. No rush, of course, he said, sliding the check onto the table with a knowing look. Sophia gave him an appreciative smile, taking the bill and fishing out her wallet. Oh, no, absolutely not, Brad protested, reaching over to stop her. This is my treat. Sophia raised an eyebrow, challenging him. We could split it. Think of it as a sign of partnership? Brad tilted his head, his hand still on hers. Maybe for the next dinner. Tonight I've got this. She grinned, reluctantly pulling her hand back and letting him settle the bill. All right, but next time, it's on me. Deal, he agreed, pocketing his card and receipt as they both rose from the table. He offered his arm and she took it without hesitation, pressing close to him as they made their way through the restaurant. Outside, the night air was cool and crisp, a slight breeze rustling the leaves around them. They paused for a moment, neither wanting to break the magic of the evening. Brad looked over at her, his heart beating fast, and couldn't help but marvel at how everything felt so right. The drive was quiet, filled with an electricity that neither of them had to acknowledge out loud. Brad kept one hand on the wheel, his other resting lightly on Sophia's thigh, his thumb grazing the fabric of her dress. Sophia's breath caught at the gentle, possessive gesture, and she glanced over at him, her eyes warm and full of unspoken anticipation. They passed street after street, the soft hum of the car adding to the soothing rhythm between them. As they turned a corner, they passed a familiar street lined with quaint houses, and Sophia's face lit up with recognition. That's my street, she murmured, glancing out the window. Her lips curled into a slight smile. I'm glad I'm not going there tonight. Brad's hand on her thigh gave a small squeeze, his gaze flicking to her, his eyes dark with a playful gleam. I'm glad too, he said, his voice a low murmur that made her heart flutter. You deserve somewhere better tonight, somewhere that's ours. She felt a thrill of excitement and nervousness mingle in her chest, and she gave him a small, encouraging smile. The way he looked at her made her feel both cherished and deeply wanted, and she found herself leaning into that feeling, letting herself be drawn to him. The houses began to grow farther apart as they entered a quieter, tree-lined neighborhood. The occasional street lamp cast fleeting shadows across the interior of the car, illuminating the look in Brad's eyes as he glanced her way. She felt her cheeks warm under his gaze, and the air between them thickened, a silent promise passing between them. Finally, Brad turned into the driveway of a beautiful, secluded home, with warm lights glowing from within. He cut the engine, and the sudden quietness intensified the moment. They sat there for a beat, the night wrapping around them like a shared secret. Brad looked at her, his eyes soft, yet filled with something deeper. Are you ready? Sophia nodded, feeling her pulse quicken, more than ever. They stepped out of the car and made their way to the front door. Brad unlocked it, holding it open for her, and as she stepped inside, she felt that unmistakable sense of entering something entirely new, a place where every moment seemed charged with meaning and possibility. Inside, Sophia found herself breathless as she took in Brad's home. The entryway opened into an expansive living area, with soaring ceilings and a grand staircase that curved up to the second floor. Beautiful, hand-picked art pieces lined the walls, and the floors gleamed under soft, recessed lighting, casting a luxurious glow over every surface. This place is incredible, she said, her eyes wide with awe as she gazed around. Brad smiled, taking her hand. I hoped you'd like it. Let me show you around. They walked through room after room, each space more stunning than the last. He led her to the gourmet kitchen, where polished marble counters and stainless steel appliances sparkled under the lights. The dining room was equally impressive, with a long mahogany table that looked as if it was set for royalty. Large glass doors opened to an expansive terrace with a pool overlooking the distant city lights. Sophia marveled at the view, feeling as though she'd stepped into a dream. Finally, he guided her into the living room, a cozy but elegant space with deep leather sofas and a roaring fireplace casting a warm, flickering glow. They settled on the couch, and Brad turned to her, his eyes twinkling. Can I offer you some wine? She nodded, smiling as he poured 2 glasses of red wine. They clinked glasses, their gazes locked as they sipped, each smile and laugh drawing them closer. Time slipped by, and soon they were leaning into each other, Sophia's head resting lightly on his shoulder as they spoke in soft tones. She felt entirely at ease, lost in the warmth of the moment. After a comfortable silence, Brad set his glass down, turning to face her fully. He took her hands in his expression turning serious yet hopeful. "Sophia," he began, his voice low, "I know this might seem sudden, but sometimes you just know when something is right. You make everything feel right." He paused, swallowing as he gazed into her eyes. Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" Sophia's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat as she took in his words. Slowly, a radiant smile spread across her face, and she squeezed his hands. "Yes," she whispered, unable to contain her happiness. "Yes, Brad, I will." Without another word, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a deep, passionate kiss. Her heart raced as he pulled her closer, their connection undeniable and complete. In a smooth motion, Brad scooped her up into his arms, her laughter filling the air as he carried her up the grand staircase to his bedroom. Their night unfolded in a shared intimacy, each moment strengthening the bond that had begun all those years ago, culminating in an evening filled with warmth, closeness, and undeniable love.
Perspective, Chapter 1. Sophia's version. The restaurant wasn't at all what Sophia had expected. When Brad had suggested dinner, she'd imagined a place with candlelit tables, soft music, maybe even a view. Instead, they sat in a cramped, bustling diner right off the highway, with brightly colored vinyl booths and a sticky laminated menu. Families filled most of the tables around them, kids picking at plates of fries, and parents chatting loudly to be heard over the noise. A few tourists were clustered around, dressed in souvenir t-shirts, looking tired after a long day of sightseeing. The air smelled like fried food, and she could hear the hum of the old jukebox in the corner, competing with the clatter of dishes. There wasn't a candle in sight, only the overhead fluorescent lights that made everything feel washed out and far from intimate. Across from her, Brad was talking, his face animated as he leaned forward over the table. He looked so pleased with himself, as if he'd brought her somewhere extraordinary. Sophia forced a smile, trying to listen, but she kept glancing at the clock on the wall, wondering when the night would end. "So, I still can't believe we're here, after all these years," he said, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her uneasy. "It's like I always knew we'd end up together." Sophia smiled awkwardly, not wanting to spoil his mood. Brad had been sweet in high school, and when he'd reached out, she thought catching up could be fun, if nothing else. But the conversation was starting to feel like something out of a romance movie. Only she hadn't signed up to play the lead. She was just here for dinner, but Brad kept talking as if they were reliving a love story, one she didn't quite remember the same way. He reached across the table to take her hand, and she felt a knot form in her stomach. His grip was warm, but a little too firm, his thumb grazing her knuckles in a way that felt possessive. She fought the urge to pull her hand back, instead forcing herself to smile, hoping he wouldn't notice her discomfort. Just then, the waiter stopped by, an older man with a tired smile. "Everything all right here?" he asked, looking between them. Sophia seized the moment. "Yes, we're actually ready for the check, please," she said quickly, hoping they could wrap up soon. But Brad's hand tightened around hers. "Not yet," he replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're just getting started." The waiter hesitated, looking at Sophia for a moment, but Brad gave him a polite nod, so he moved along. Sophia's heart sank a little as Brad continued talking about their high school days, about memories she barely remembered. The date continued to Sophia's disagreement. "You know, I've always had quite a crush on you, Sophia," says Brad, feeling a little embarrassed. "Oh, really?" says Sophia in a sarcastic tone. She knew very well that Brad had been in love with her for years. Everyone in their high school did. He was sweet and innocent, but she never saw him as a boyfriend type. She had made it very clear, but that never stopped him from trying to flirt with her every second he could. "Yeah, I really did," Brad continued. "I can say, I still think some of those feelings are starting to come back tonight." "Oh, wow," says Sophia, embarrassed. "I thought we could just catch up. I don't think I'm really looking for anything serious right now." "What about you?" he asked, ignoring what she had just said. "You've always had a thing for me, haven't you?" Sophia begins talking a little louder, and as the other tables start listening. "No, Brad, I haven't." "Settle down, Sophia. There's no need to hide it. I saw the way that you lit up when I had asked you to prom. I went with you because I felt bad. Kinda like why I'm here tonight." She screams. "I've had enough. Excuse me. Check, please." The waiter brings the check over. "No rush." Sophia goes to grab the check and hands it to Brad. He grabs the check and looks at the receipt. "You want to go half on this?" he asks without embarrassment. "It'll be like we're starting a partnership." Sophia grabs the bill and pays for the entire thing herself. After what felt like hours, they finally left the restaurant. Outside, the air was cool and refreshing, a welcome contrast to the noisy diner. Brad offered to drive her home, and though she was tempted to call a cab, she didn't want to be rude along with spending money she wasn't planning to on dinner. She climbed into his car, telling herself that the night was almost over. The drive was quiet, but there was something in the way Brad kept glancing at her, his eyes lingering a little too long. When he rested his hand on her thigh, she felt a chill run through her. She forced herself to stay calm, to not show her discomfort. As they drove past her street, she glanced out the window, feeling her chest tighten. "That's my street, Brad," she said, hoping he'd turn around. He smiled, keeping his gaze fixed on the road. "I know. I was hoping we could keep the night going. I thought we could spend some more time together. At my place." Sophia's heart raced, her mind scrambling for a response. She wanted to tell him she was tired, that it was getting late, but his hand still rested on her thigh, firm and insistent. She managed a small nod, hoping it would be enough to keep things calm. When they pulled up to Brad's house, Sophia felt a pang of unease. The place wasn't the grand mansion she'd imagined when he'd mentioned his new home. Instead, it was a worn, creaky two-story house with chipped paint and darkened windows that seemed to watch them like a silent, unfriendly audience. The yard was overgrown, weeds sprouting through the cracks in the sidewalk, and the porch light flickered dimly, casting eerie shadows over the steps. Brad guided her inside, and she tried to keep her expression neutral, despite the disrepair around her. The interior smelled faintly of dust and stale air, and the furniture looked mismatched and worn. Brad seemed oblivious to it all as he led her through a tour of the house, his voice animated as he pointed out each room as though it were grander than it was. The kitchen, with its scratched counters and aging appliances, was supposedly top of the line. The living room, cluttered with old magazines and worn-out furniture, was cozy. "This is the door to the basement," he shows her. "Nothing much down there, just storage." She tried to stay polite, nodding along, hoping the night would end soon. But he seemed in no hurry, lingering in each room, watching her face for any sign of approval. Finally, they returned to the living room, where he poured a glass of wine for each of them. She looked down at her glass, the dark liquid swirling in the dim light, but the thought of drinking it turned her stomach. "Actually, could I just have some water?" she asked, forcing a smile. Brad's face froze for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable passing over his eyes, but he nodded. "Of course." He returned with a glass of water, handing it to her with an intense look that made her uncomfortable. She took a sip, hoping to calm her nerves, and tried to keep up the conversation. But it was hard with Brad sitting so close, his eyes fixed on her with that same unyielding intensity. He reached for her hand, his fingers pressing down firmly. She pulled back slightly, her smile faltering. "Brad, this has been nice, but He didn't seem to hear her. "Sophia," he said, his voice filled with a quiet urgency. "This is all I've ever wanted, you know. You and me, together. I can't imagine my life any other way." He moved closer, his hand finding hers again, his gaze piercing. "Will you spend the rest of your life with me?" Sophia's eyes widened, a cold shock prickling down her spine. She tried to laugh it off, but he didn't release her hand, his eyes steady and serious. "Brad, this is insane," she stammered, pulling her hand away sharply. "We just reconnected. This was supposed to be a fun night. Catching up, reminiscing. You're talking like we're—" She shook her head, standing up, her voice rising in frustration. "This is crazy." Brad's face darkened, his expression turning unreadable. He didn't say a word, only watched her, his eyes unblinking as she backed away, her hands trembling. Suddenly, she felt a wave of dizziness sweep over her, the edges of her vision blurring. She blinked, her knees weakening as a strange heaviness settled over her body. What's happening?" she mumbled, her voice slurring. She staggered, barely able to keep herself upright as the room tilted around her. The last thing she saw was Brad's face, calm and composed, as he moved toward her. Her body slumped, and she felt herself falling, sinking into the worn couch, her mind drifting into darkness against her will. She heard Brad's voice, soft and soothing, as though he were speaking to a child. "It's okay, Sophia. You're safe now." She tried to fight, to keep her eyes open, to push herself up, but her strength faded, and everything went black. When Sophia awoke, she was lying in an unfamiliar bed, undressed, her head pounding and her body feeling sluggish and weak. She glanced around, dread coiling in her stomach as memories from the night began to surface. The bed was neatly made, and the room was sparsely decorated, just as worn and eerie as the rest of the house. Brad's house. She tried to sit up, but her body felt heavy, her limbs unresponsive. The bedroom door creaked open, and Brad stepped inside, his eyes lighting up when he saw she was awake. He came to the edge of the bed, sitting beside her with a soft smile that chilled her to the bone. "I knew we were meant to be together," he whispered, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. Sophia's mind screamed in terror, but her body remained limp, powerless against the nightmare that was now her reality.
So that is going to do it for today. I hope that you guys did enjoy. Hopefully, Perspective lived up to the hype that I was giving it. However, we still have a lot more to go, and I promise you, this story, even though it does get hard to listen to at some points, is going to be one that you're not going to want to miss. So definitely come back next Friday for Chapter 2, and every Friday in the month of July to hear the entire story of Perspective. As I stated earlier, The Hollow Season, my brand new book, will be coming out on August 1st. It will be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. However, I want to give you guys a chance to win a signed copy of my book, The Hollow Season. I'm actually giving out 3 signed copies. Here on the Friday Night Campfire Stories YouTube channel, I make 3 full-length videos every single week. On Mondays, I do Echoes of the Past. Wednesdays, I do Far From Fiction. And then Friday, the namesake of the channel, what you're watching now, the Friday Night Campfire Stories. I'm going to be giving away 1 signed copy for each of the series. All you have to do is be subscribed, like at least one of the videos, and comment on at least one of the videos. And when you do that, you will be entered in. Now, with that being said, you can enter in on every single full-length video that I post between June 30th and July 25th. And then the winners will be announced on July 26th. All you would have to do is on any video that you watch, if you like it, and if you leave a comment, then you'll be entered in once again. Again, you can enter in as many times as I make a full-length video, and then you'll have even more chances to win a signed copy. So definitely do that. Like I said, it's absolutely free. All you gotta do, subscribe, like, and comment, and you're entered in. But that is going to wrap things up for this Friday. I am on a road to 1,000 subscribers and definitely need your help to get there. We're getting close, but definitely need to make one big push. I'm trying to make it there by the end of August. So if you guys could help out, definitely hit that subscribe button. And we will see you guys next week. As always, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with me.